It's been very difficult to criticize the war effort for people who believed it should be criticized. It's often difficult, or more difficult, at a time of war. It is difficult to criticize a commander-in-chief who has such a huge popularity rating in the country, and President Bush's popularity rating in our latest polls now show that his popularity is greater now, or his popularity in how he's doing his job is greater now than throughout the entire presidency of Ronald Reagan. So it isn't always easy, but one politician who has taken at least the Afghan campaign on so far, Senator John Kerry. He's a Democrat from Massachusetts, and he is with us today in Boston. Senator Kerry, what made you decide in the first instance, I don't wish to paint you with too dark a brush here, but what made you decide in the first instance that it was necessary to criticize aspects of the U.S. campaign in Afghanistan?
Well, I was asked a question, Peter. I gave an honest answer, which may be rare in politics, but I was on Meet the Press, I'm sorry to say, another network,
right.
And I was asked a question about whether there were, what was the measure of success, what was the measure of failure. Today is a day to remember people who died and the attack, and I'm sort of uncomfortable in the position of sort of going into the strategy and talking about what we're in the war, because I think that so many good things have come out of that day. But what I said, I have nothing but admiration for the work that the troops did on the ground. Our guys who went in those small special operations teams, worked with Hamid Karzai, worked with the Northern Alliance, did a brilliant job of soldiering. I mean, they deserve enormous recognition today, especially because they showed initiative and creativity and made something happen. But all I said in answer to the question is, look, the Taliban was not the principal focus. The Taliban didn't attack us. Al-Qaeda attacked us. The Taliban are a collateral component of how you get to Al-Qaeda. And the Taliban, in fact, were hated by most of the people in the country. This was not a, I just don't paint it quite as optimistically as others. It was a stumbling block. We cured it. But now major components of Al-Qaeda have dispersed. They're in other places in the world. We still hear perhaps in 60 countries. So to me, the war talk, the war rhetoric is in excess and perhaps even not even the appropriate rhetoric for what we're facing. This is a major intelligence operation and a law enforcement operation, more than it is a sort of a war as we've known it. And occasionally, special operations will be needed in order to go after cells and particular terrorist entities.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second just to say that I was also sensitive when I knew I was going to talk to you about whether or not this was the day to talk about failures of government or perceived failures of government. And I agree with you, it's a sensitive moment. On the other hand, sir, a lot of people are paying attention today, and so I ask you these questions in the spirit of an honest and necessary debate to the democratic process. We hear reports about Al-Qaeda going back to Afghanistan, and
Correct.
if that turns out to be the case, what does the United States do? Does the United States have the right policy in place to deal with them now?
Well, I don't believe that we even have the right policy in place with respect to the rebuilding of Afghanistan. There are many people who have asserted that we have not put enough people in the country in order to begin to make that kind of transition. That may be one of the reasons why Al-Qaeda has the capacity to perhaps go back in. This is very difficult to do on the cheap, and it's very difficult to do very quickly. In addition to that, I think that many of us feel that the United States has needed to proceed in these past weeks in a way that brings people to our effort, not pushes them away. That there has to be a greater effort to reach out to other countries, to other people, to explain our case and to build support for what we're doing. We all support what we're doing. No one in our country, there's not a sliver of daylight between any member of any party or any political ideology with respect to the need to win, with respect to our commitment to do so, and our absolute unity behind the president, whatever decision he winds up making.
Let me interrupt you again, because
Sure.
there is the beginnings of a debate about what the president policy should be about Iraq, and whether or not the president, among other things, is not distracting or being distracted or distracting from the war against terrorism by talking so much about unilaterally hitting Saddam Hussein.
I believe we are not at the moment of making a unilateral decision, Peter. we have in place an inspection agreement because of the ceasefire agreement that went in 1991. That ceasefire agreement calls for Saddam Hussein to live up to a certain standard of weapons inspections. It seems to me that the place to start is not with talk of invasion or war or preemption. The place to start, it was with a discussion about the enforcement of the weapons inspection process, which ultimately licenses you to do regime change as the ultimate enforcement mechanism. So I
you
believe,
support the president at the moment. If Mr. Hussein doesn't live up to the Security Council resolutions, you're in favor of attacking him?
I'm in favor of using whatever means are necessary as you go through a scale. I don't think it automatically means your first step is to attack him. You may, well, let me change that. Your first step may not be to invade, but you may indeed want to attack in certain ways that are very thoughtful and very targeted and very strategic, and begin to put pressure on him. And I think there are many ways to go at this short of having made a unilateral decision that all you have on the table is invasion.
Many thanks. Senator Kerry, I appreciate you
sir.
taking the time today, and I know you feel the same way about this day as everybody else does. Didn't mean to imply for a second otherwise.